In today's video, we'll talk about why so many Linux distros, the amazing history of Linux. Myself, Mohammad Zubair, and this channel is all about showing you how to become a highly paid IT pro really fast. So, without any further ado, let's get started. The world's first operating system was developed in 1956, and General Motors developed it for the IBM 704. And after that, over time, we kept on getting new operating systems. And in 1985, we saw a new operating system that had the power to do humongous computations in a tiny bit of time. And that was Microsoft's Windows operating system. That was the first operating system that left a significant mark on commercial users. With the release of Microsoft's operating system, a new door of opportunity opened for other operating systems, and Linux was one of them. In 1991, a graduate student who was 21 years old announced a new operating system, and he said that it was just his hobby, and he named it as FreeX. But after some years, that hobby came out to be one of the most significant projects of the history in the world of operating system. Now let's talk about what is Linux. Well, Linux is an open source operating system whose kernel acts as the central unit for establishing the communication between the hardware and the system software in a computer. And as soon as the Linux based operating system saw the light of the day, people from all form of life started to love this operating system. And to your surprise, almost 97% of the servers in the world today run on Linux. And as Linux was aimed to be open source, it helped and motivated many other people to develop and make new operating system based on Linux. With time being, we saw more and more distributions from Linux or which were based on Linux. Now, here we need to understand what is distro first. Well, distro is a complete operating system that is based on Linux, and each distro will have some libraries, packages, and all of them will contain some package manager to install additional packages into the distribution. And all of those distro will also have a desktop UI. There are many Linux distributions where you have multiple flavors that a distro use. For example, we have GNOME, XFCE, KDE, Mate, Cinnamon, etc. And the most prominent one is the GNOME, as most Linux distributions use it, or you can say at least by the most major Linux distribution like Ubuntu, it uses the GNOME desktop environment. If we talk about the earlier nature of Linux distributions, only those things were included in the Linux systems that were essential for any operating system. More and more things started to get added to Linux distributions for the time being. For example, now we see many games available for the Linux-based operating system. Earlier, there were no games or Linux was not intended for the games. We also have multimedia applications which were also not there in an earlier version of Linux. And now Linux is also getting used to a lot of heavy stuff. Now let's talk about some of the other factors why Linux distributions are liked by many people, especially professionals, organizations, and enterprises. Well, there are a lot of reasons that we can think of. For example, Linux distributions are open source. Their codes are available for everyone, and anyone can use those codes to make their own customized Linux distribution. Second reason is secure. Obviously, Linux distributions are more secure than any other operating system out there. Third reason is best for older computers. While now we have Linux distributions that are compatible with the older laptops and computers, and as well as for the latest and most improved laptops out there. Customization. Well, Linux distributions allows you to do any customization as per your liking and as per your need, and that is why we are having so many Linux distributions. Fifth reason is free to use. Almost every Linux distribution that you will find out there is free. You do not have to pay anything. You just need to download the ISO file and you just need to install it and you are good to go. Sixth reason is it has the large community support. Linux users are very loyal to its operating system, and because of that, the community is very mature and you will have solution to almost every problem within minutes. The seventh reason is privacy. Well, Linux ensures the privacy of users' data as it never collects much data from the users while using its distributions or software. But this is not true for many other operating systems. So we can say that Linux distributions were loved by people because of the security and some other major features. Because it is considered very secure and very powerful against viruses and attacks. And most of the security systems and programs that you will see today are based on Linux. And that is just because of the Linux platform is more secure than any other operating system like Windows or Mac. Now let's discuss why there are so many Linux distributions and the reasons and purposes behind having so many Linux distributions. Well, there are some excellent reasons. And if I say that this is the beauty of Linux, that we have so many distributions based on Linux, it would not be wrong. The Linux kernel or Linux core can be considered as the engine of any plane. You can build anything around that engine because it is not dependent on anything. You can have a plane that you want to move fast, or you can also have a plane to move your cargo, and it does not affect the engine. Same goes for Linux kernel. Around your Linux kernel, you can develop anything. And as Linux is open source, many people started to develop distributions according to their requirements. Because with time, new and new things started to get added, and every person wanted to have different types of features in a Linux distribution. And this factor forced people or developers to make Linux distributions with the customized need of the users. And as we can see today, some Linux distributions are considered suitable for the programming task and some are considered for gaming. Earlier, there was no concept of any distribution supporting the games. Today, we have specialized Linux distributions for the game and many Linux distributions starting and giving the official support for different gaming platforms, libraries, and packages. With the time being, as the IT field moved toward the data sciences, machine learning, artificial intelligence, data mining, image processing, etc., we needed more and more powerful system to work on those phenomena. For example, if you have a robust neural network, to run some algorithm on that, you might need a GPU. Linux also saw this, and after some time, we had Linux distributions that come with the official support for the GPUs, video cards, etc. And as Linux distributions started to support graphic cards, video cards, and GPUs, more and more people started to shift towards the Linux distribution. As people started to shift towards Linux, more and more distributions started to develop with the sole purpose of either gaming or programming. For example, now we have Pop OS, Garuda Linux, etc. Pop OS comes with the official support of NVIDIA graphic card, and Garuda is one such Linux distribution that is considered excellent for gaming. Then we have Kali Linux, Arch Linux, etc., and they are considered suitable for programming. So these were some of the reasons why we have so many Linux distributions today. Till today, there are almost thousands of Linux distributions that are out there. Some of prominent of them are Ubuntu, Kubuntu, Fedora, Manjaro, OpenSUSE, Kali Linux, Arch Linux, etc. And these are some of the few out there. Ubuntu, Manjaro, Fedora, and OpenSUSE are outstanding Linux distribution for the general purpose. And it is very likable by the professional users because we have a lot of support available for these distros. These distros are slightly easier to use, and if you are using the Linux distribution for the first time, you must consider Ubuntu, Manjaro, Fedora, or OpenSUSE. Today, we also have some independent Linux distributions. For example, Fire OS, which gets used for Amazon devices. Then we have Alpine, that is good for very light devices. And the most prominent of them all is Android, that is also based on Linux, and it is being used by billions of people every day with billions of devices. And that brings us to the end of today's video. So I hope now you know the amazing history of Linux and the reasons behind having so many Linux distribution. So please leave a like, subscribe and press the bell icon. We'll see you in the next video.